They said she was cursed. From the moment Selene had drawn her first breath beneath the blood-red moon, whispers had followed her. The midwives exchanged uneasy glances. The elders muttered in disapproval, and her father had looked upon her with a mixture of disappointment and disdain. For though she cried like every other newborn, though she had the softest dark hair and the palest striking eyes, something about her was wrong. The healers declared it when she was barely 13 summers old. After failed rites of passage and endless tests, they proclaimed what her father had suspected all along. Selene would never bear children. Her womb, they said, was barren, locked by some curse beyond even the spirit's healing. To a common girl, such news would have been cruel but survivable. But Selene was no common girl. She was the daughter of a once proud warrior bloodline, born into a pack where women were valued first and foremost for the heirs they could give. A Luna who could not bear pups was considered a ruinous omen, a stain upon her alpha and a curse upon the entire pack. So Selene grew up in silence, carrying a brand she had never asked for. Children mocked her. Women whispered behind their hands when she passed. Suitors turned away the moment they heard the word barren. But it was her father's scorn that cut deepest. "You're nothing but dead weight," he spat at her one night, his eyes glazed with ale. "A useless mouth to feed. The goddess cursed me with you." Every word carved another wound into Selene's heart, but she never let him see her cry. She refused to give him the satisfaction. She learned to hold her head high, even as the world looked down on her. But deep inside, a question haunted her. Why would the moon goddess create her, only to break her? The marketplace was alive with sound that day. The smell of roasted meat mixed with the stench of livestock and sweat, and the air hummed with the chatter of traders, villagers, and hunters bartering over wares. But in the center square, a different kind of transaction was about to take place, one that would stain Selene's life forever. Her wrists were bound with coarse rope, the fibers biting into her skin. She stood on a crude wooden platform, her long dark hair falling in tangled strands across her face. The sun blazed mercilessly overhead, baking her skin while dozens of eyes watched with thinly veiled amusement. She felt their stares like daggers. To them, she was not a girl. She was not flesh and blood, heart and soul. She was a thing, a burden to be traded. The auctioneer, a wiry man with a voice as sharp as a crow's caw, shouted above the din. "Step forward, girl. Show yourself." Selene obeyed, though her body trembled. She could feel the sneers, the laughter, the whispers. "That's the barren one. Who'd pay for a girl who can't give heirs? She's cursed. Look at her eyes, unnatural." Her stomach knotted, but she kept her chin high. She would not bow, not here, not now. Beside the platform stood her father. His expression was cold, his arms crossed as though he had long since washed his hands of her. He had made the decision weeks ago. If no man would take her as wife, then she would be sold. Better to trade her for coin than let her drain his resources. Selene had begged him. She had fallen to her knees, tears burning her cheeks. "Please, Father, don't do this. I can serve. I can work harder than anyone. I'll take care of you in your old age." But his eyes had been like stone. "You're nothing but dead weight." At least this way you'll have some worth. And now here she was, paraded like cattle before wolves who came to watch her humiliation. 5 silver pieces, shouted a merchant from the back, his face red and eager. He was known for buying women and working them until they collapsed. 7, another barked, laughter in his tone. 10, the numbers climbed, though not from genuine desire. This was entertainment, a spectacle. Who would own the bearing girl? Who would break her first? Selene clenched her jaw, nails digging into her palms. Every voice, every laugh was another chain around her throat. Her dignity crumbled, but still, she stood. And then, silence. It fell suddenly, unnaturally, as though the air itself froze. Whispers rippled through the crowd, followed by a heavy thud of boots striking the earth. From the edge of the square, a figure approached. Tall, broad-shouldered, cloaked in black trimmed with silver. His very presence parted the crowd like a blade through water. Warriors flanked him, their armor gleaming, their gazes hard. Selene's heart stuttered in her chest. She knew that man. Everyone did. Alpha Kalen, leader of the Bloodfang pack, a name whispered with fear and awe. Ruthless in battle, untouchable in power, a wolf said to be chosen by the goddess herself. His arrival here, in this forgotten village, was unthinkable. The auctioneer faltered, his voice cracking. My lord, forgive me, I didn't. Kalen ignored him. His eyes, icy, piercing, wolf eyes, locked onto Selene. She felt it like a brand against her skin, searing through flesh to bone. For a heartbeat, she forgot to breathe. He stepped forward, slow, deliberate, until he stood at the base of the platform. The crowd held their breath. Selene wanted to look away, to shield herself from that gaze, but something rooted her in place. There was no cruelty in his eyes, no mockery, but there was no softness either. Only command. The auctioneer stammered, fumbling for words. Yes, my lord, the girl she is barren, of course, but if you wish to make an offer. Kalen's voice cut through the air like steel. I'm not offering.
A ripple of confusion surged through the onlookers. The auctioneer blinked, bewildered. Then what, my lord? Kalen lifted his chin, his expression unreadable. His voice was calm, final, absolute. I'll take her. The words struck like thunder. The marketplace erupted. Gasps, shouts, murmurs of disbelief. Did he say, impossible, a barren woman claimed by an alpha? He must be mad. Selene's father stumbled forward, bowing frantically. My lord, surely you jest. She is nothing, a worthless. Kalen's gaze snapped to him, cold as frost. Did I ask your opinion? Her father froze, his mouth snapping shut. Selene's breath came shallow and fast. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This couldn't be real. Why would he, of all people, choose her? She searched his face for an answer, but Kalen gave nothing away. His hand rose, slow, deliberate, and with a flick of his fingers, his warrior cut her ropes. The coarse fibers fell away, leaving red welts on her wrists. For the first time in her life, Selene stood unbound. The alpha extended his hand toward her. Come. Her knees trembled, her mind screamed in confusion, but something deeper, primal, stirred in her chest, a pull she couldn't explain, a spark that made her hand lift against her will. Her fingers touched his. Warmth surged through her veins, fierce and undeniable, and before the eyes of the entire village, before her father, before every mocking mouth that had ever spat her name, Alpha Kalen claimed Selene as his own. The marketplace was still buzzing long after Kalen led Selene away. The murmurs followed them like shadows. Why her? Why now? Has the Alpha gone mad? Selene walked in silence, her small hand still clasped in his. She felt the weight of every stare, every whisper clinging to her back, but Kalen didn't seem to notice. His stride was steady, his grip unyielding, as though nothing and no one could challenge him. She tried to keep her head high, but confusion gnawed at her. Why me? Why claim the barren girl when he could have anyone? The path from the square led not to the forests or the Bloodfang lands, as she had expected, but to the Grand Council Hall, an ancient stone building at the heart of the village where decisions that shaped all pacts were made. When the heavy doors creaked open, Selene's breath caught. Inside, seated in a wide semicircle, were the council of elders and the high-ranking alphas of neighboring pacts. They had been gathered for trade talks and territorial disputes. Now, Kalen marched her directly into their presence. The chatter ceased instantly. Dozens of sharp eyes turned their way. Selene felt her skin crawl under the scrutiny. An elder rose first, his voice rough like gravel. "Alpha Kalen," he said, his tone both respectful and wary. "We did not expect your presence here today, and certainly not with—" She glanced at Selene, his lips curling ever so slightly. "Her." Kalen's grip on her hand tightened, a subtle reassurance. He strode to the center of the chamber, pulling Selene to stand beside him. His shadow loomed large in the candlelight. "I have chosen," he said simply. The words hung in the air like a blade. The silence broke into gasps, then a rising murmur. "Chosen? The barren girl? He cannot be serious. A mockery of tradition?" Selene's stomach churned. She felt exposed, a lamb standing among wolves. Every whisper seemed to claw at her skin. She wanted to vanish, to melt into the stone floor, but Kalen did not waver. His icy gaze swept over the council, silencing them one by one. When he finally spoke, his voice was iron. "I do not care what you think she is. From this day forward, she is mine, and I claim her, here and now, as my mate, as my Luna." The chamber exploded. "Outrageous! This defies every law! You doom your pack!" Selene's knees weakened. His Luna! Her mind reeled. Surely he was mocking her. Surely this was some cruel jest, a way to humiliate the council. But no. Kalen's grip remained steady, grounding, as if daring her to stand tall beside him. The elder who had spoken first slammed his staff against the floor. "Kalen, you risk the wrath of the goddess. A Luna who cannot bear children is no Luna at all." Kalen's lips curved into something dangerously close to a smile, cold, sharp, merciless. "Do you question my bond, elder? Do you presume to tell me who the moon goddess has chosen?" The room fell into uneasy silence. None dared outright challenge him. Not here, not now. Selene's heart twisted. She wanted to speak, to deny it, to save him from the shame of this claim, but the words caught in her throat. The way he said it, with such certainty, such finality, made it feel almost real. The Steel Claw Alpha sneered, refusing to yield. "Then prove it. If she is truly chosen, let her face the rites. let the bond be tested before the eyes of the council. A cruel suggestion. The rites were ancient, sacred, and dangerous. If she failed, it would not only prove her barrenness, it would humiliate Kaelin as well. Selene's blood ran cold. Her lips parted to protest, but Kaelin spoke before she could. Done. Gasps filled the chamber once more. She turned to him, eyes wide with panic. Done! He agreed? Does he want me to fail? But Kaelin only looked at her, his gaze steady, unflinching, and in that gaze she saw something she had never seen before. Not pity, not disdain, not cruelty. Something fiercer, something like belief. The elder's staff struck the floor once more, sealing the decision. So be it. At the next full moon, the girl shall undergo the rites. If she fails, the bond is false, and your claim is void. Kaelin inclined his head, utterly unfazed. She will not fail. The council dismissed, though not without lingering whispers and doubtful glances. Selene remained rooted in place, her heart a storm inside her chest. When the chamber finally emptied, leaving only her and Kaelin, she found her voice at last. Why? Why me? Why humiliate yourself for someone like me? Kaelin turned to her, his presence overwhelming in the quiet hall. For a long moment he said nothing, only studied her as though weighing her soul. Then, softly but firmly, he answered, Because you are not what they say you are. Selene's breath hitched. His words struck deeper than any insult ever had. Before she could ask what he meant, Kaelin released her hand and strode toward the exit, his cloak billowing behind him. Over his shoulder, he spoke again, his voice echoing off the stone.
Prepare yourself, Selene. The goddess doesn't make mistakes. And with that, he was gone, leaving Selene trembling in the center of the council chamber, caught between fear, disbelief, and the faintest spark of something she had not felt in years: hope. The fortress loomed before Selene like something pulled from a nightmare. Black stone towers rose high into the mist, their jagged peaks stabbing at the gray sky. Iron gates groaned as they swung open, and the howl of wolves echoed from somewhere deep inside the walls. Selene shivered as Kaelin's warriors led her through the courtyard. Every head turned toward her, the blacksmith pausing mid-strike at his anvil, young wolves dropping their practice weapons, pack women halting their chores to whisper. Their gazes were sharp, suspicious, some openly hostile. The barren one, their eyes seemed to say. This is the woman our Alpha brought home? This is to be our Luna? The whispers grew as she passed. She'll doom us. The Alpha's lost his senses. She doesn't even look strong. Selene's face burned. She tried to keep her chin lifted, but every word struck like a stone. She had endured mockery before, but here, surrounded by strangers whose loyalty belonged to the man who had just claimed her, the sting cut deeper. Kaelin walked ahead of her, silent, unbothered by the stares or whispers. His long stride carried him swiftly across the courtyard, his presence alone parting the crowd. No one dared speak openly while he was near, but as soon as his shadow passed, their murmurs resumed, sharper than ever. The doors to the great hall opened with a booming echo. Selene stepped inside, her breath catching at the sight. The chamber was vast, lit by firelight that danced across stone walls and long banners bearing the sigil of the Bloodfang pack, a wolf's head painted in silver against crimson. At the far end rose a throne-like chair carved from black oak, draped with wolf pelts. This was Kaelin's domain, and now, somehow, it was to be hers. He led her up the dais, then stopped, turning to face her. His eyes, cold and unreadable, held hers for a long, silent moment. "You will stay here," he said at last, his tone clipped. "The West Wing is yours. No one enters without my leave." Selene blinked. She had expected something, some explanation, some kindness, perhaps, but his words were orders, nothing more. "And the council?" she asked, her voice trembling despite her effort to steady it. They said I must face the rites. I'll fail. You know I'll fail." Kaelin's gaze sharpened, and for the briefest instant she thought she saw something flicker in his eyes. Not anger, not disdain, but something harder to name. "You will not fail," he said simply, then turned his back to her. Dismissed. Her throat tightened. She wanted to scream at him, to demand why he had done this, why he had dragged her into a life she had not asked for. But the words stuck. She had been invisible her whole life, ignored, mocked, tossed aside. Now, even when she was claimed, she still felt like nothing more than a pawn in a game she didn't understand. That night, Selene lay awake in a bed far too soft, staring at the high stone ceiling. The silence pressed down on her. This was no home. This was a cage with gilded walls. The next morning, whispers greeted her again. Servants bowed stiffly, but avoided her eyes. Warriors in the courtyard halted their training when she passed, muttering behind their hands. "She'll bring weakness. The goddess cursed her. She won't last the month." Selene forced herself not to cry. Not here. Not in front of them. By midday, she found herself in the great hall again, standing awkwardly at the edge while Kaelin sat with his beta and advisors. They were discussing patrol routes, supply shortages, threats from neighboring packs. Selene tried to stay invisible, but she caught fragments of conversation. "The Steel Claw Alpha is stirring again. He'll use her as excuse." "Our warriors doubt you, my lord. They fear the curse." To claim her publicly was reckless. Her chest ached. She wanted to disappear, but Kaelin's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Enough," he growled, low and dangerous. "Say what you will of me, but you will not speak against her. Not in my presence. Not ever." The hall fell silent. Selene's breath hitched. He had said it so simply, so fiercely, as though the matter was already decided. The room bowed to his will, but their eyes still burned with doubt. After the meeting, when the hall had emptied, Selene gathered her courage and approached him. "You don't have to defend me," she whispered. "I know what they think. They're right. I am barren. You're only making them hate me more." Kaelin rose slowly, towering over her. His expression as cold as ever, but his voice held a quiet intensity. "Let them talk. Words are wind. What matters is what you prove." Selene looked up at him, confusion twisting her chest. "Prove? How can I prove what I'm not? How can I prove I'm not a curse?" For a long moment he studied her, as if searching for something hidden beneath her skin. His jaw tightened, but instead of answering, he turned and walked away, leaving her with nothing but questions. Days turned into weeks, and still Kaelin remained distant. He protected her fiercely in public, never allowing insult or challenge to stand. But in private, he was a wall of stone, cold, unreadable, untouchable. Selene felt adrift, neither rejected nor accepted, neither prisoner nor partner, claimed yet not truly seen. But whispers spread like wildfire through the pack. And one night, as she passed through the courtyard, she overheard two warriors laughing. "Did you see her today? She almost tripped on her own dress. A Luna who can't even walk straight? What a joke! She'll be the death of us all." Something inside Selene snapped. For so long, she had endured the insults, the whispers, the scorn. But here, in this fortress where she was supposed to belong, it cut too deeply. "Enough!" she shouted, her voice shaking the night air. "Say what you want about me to my face, not behind my back." The warriors froze, stunned by her outburst. But before either could respond, a growl rumbled from the shadows. Kalen stepped forward, his presence filling the courtyard like thunder. His eyes glowed faintly, his wolf close to the surface. "You dare mock my Luna?" His voice was low, deadly. The warriors paled, dropping to their knees. "Forgive us, Alpha. We meant no disrespect." "You will show her the respect she deserves, or you will not live to regret it." They bowed lower, trembling. Kalen's gaze lingered on them a moment longer before he turned to Selene. His expression softened just slightly, though his voice remained stern. "Do not waste your breath on worms. They will learn." Selene stared at him, her anger cooling into something else, something dangerously close to awe. For the first time she saw not just a cold alpha, but a man who would burn the world before letting it harm her. And though fear and doubt still gnawed at her heart, a small spark flickered inside her. Perhaps he was right. Perhaps words were only wind. But she could not shake the question that haunted her still. Why me? The moon hung low over the blood-fanged fortress, a pale silver eye watching over the night. Selene sat on the balcony of her chamber, her fingers clutching the iron railing as the cold mountain wind whipped her hair into a wild tangle. She hadn't slept properly since she'd arrived. Every time she closed her eyes,
Shadows pressed against her mind, whispers she couldn't understand, shapes clawing at the edge of her dreams. Her heart thudded in her chest. She told herself it was just fear, the weight of her new reality. But deep down, she knew better. Something inside her was stirring. That night, the dream came sharper than before. She stood barefoot in a forest of endless black pines. The ground pulsed beneath her feet as if it were alive. A howl split the silence, so close it rattled her bones. Then, through the fog, a massive wolf appeared. Its eyes glowed the same piercing silver as Alpha Kalen's. Selene's breath hitched. No, it couldn't be. The beast stalked forward, each step deliberate. She should have been afraid, yet instead of fear, heat burned in her chest. A strange, undeniable pull. When the wolf bowed its head before her, she reached out with trembling hands, her fingers brushing its fur. The moment she touched it, fire lanced through her veins. Selene gasped, jerking awake. Her body shook, drenched in sweat, but her hands still tingled as if they had truly touched him. She clutched her chest, whispering, "What's happening to me?" Morning came, but her exhaustion lingered. At breakfast, whispers filled the hall. Warriors glanced her way. their words not hidden well enough. Why does he keep her? She'll bring ruin. Everyone knows barren Lunas are cursed. She's fragile. She won't last the winter. Selene forced her shoulders straight, though every word was a knife. She kept her gaze on her untouched food, fighting to remain calm. Then Kaelin entered. The hall silenced instantly. He strode forward, his black cloak swirling like a shadow, his eyes sharp enough to freeze the air. Without a word, he sat at the head of the table. His eyes flicked toward her, brief, unreadable. But in that glance, she felt anchored, as though no insult could reach her while he was near. Still, Kaelin said nothing to defend her. No correction to the rumors, no words of comfort, only silence. And yet, when a warrior at the far end muttered, "She'll doom us all," Kaelin's fork clattered against the table. His gaze snapped to the man, cold and merciless. "Say it again," Kaelin said, his voice like steel. The warrior paled, bowing his head. "Forgive me, Alpha." The hall remained hushed after that. No one dared speak another ill word in her presence. Selene lowered her gaze, confused. He didn't comfort her, but he protected her. Why? That evening, restless, she wandered the fortress halls. Her steps carried her to the old stone temple, half in ruins, tucked behind the fortress walls. Something about it pulled her in. Inside, moonlight streamed through cracks in the roof, bathing the crumbling altar in silver light. As she approached, the air shimmered, faint, almost invisible. Then a voice, soft as wind, whispered through her mind. "Child of the moon, not barren, but chosen." Selene staggered back, clutching her chest. "What's there?" A figure emerged from the shadows. Bent with age, her eyes glowing faintly, the seer of the Bloodfang pack stepped forward. "I have waited for you, the Alpha's mate who is not barren, but bound." Her heart thundered. Bound? To what? The seer's gaze pierced her. Her womb was sealed, not cursed. You were hidden from those who would exploit your gift. But now, the seal begins to crack. Selene's knees trembled. What gift? The seer leaned closer, her whisper trembling like a prophecy. The blood of the first Lunas flows in you, the power to bear not just heirs, but legends. Selene's breath caught. That's impossible. The healers. They were blind, the seer snapped. You are not barren, child. You are a vessel of power greater than they can comprehend. That is why the Alpha claimed you, not out of pity, but instinct. His wolf recognized what men could not. Selene's mind spun. Her father had branded her broken. The world had scorned her. And now this woman spoke of destiny, of ancient power in her blood. The seer grasped her hands, her grip surprisingly strong. Beware, Selene. Strength awakens in fire and shadow. Nightmares will plague you, visions will guide you. But remember, the bond you share with him is the key. Without trust, both your fates will burn. Before Selene could speak, the air seemed to shiver, and the seer faded back into the shadows, leaving her trembling in the moonlight. That night, Selene lay awake, her mind tormented by the seer's words. Her fingers traced her abdomen unconsciously, the place she had always believed was empty, useless. Could it be true? Could she be more than what they said? A knock shattered her thoughts. The door opened, and there he was, Alpha Kaelin, tall and imposing, the torchlight casting sharp lines across his face. "You shouldn't wander alone at night," he said, his voice low. Her heart jumped. You knew I went to the temple?" "I know everything that happens in my fortress," he replied coolly. His eyes softened for just a flicker,
then hardened again. "Did the seer speak to you?" Her lips parted. She said I'm not barren. She said I'm... Enough. His voice was sharp, but she caught the edge of something else. Fear, maybe, or anger buried deep. He stepped closer, so close she could feel the heat radiating from him. His eyes locked onto hers, intense and unyielding. "You will not repeat her words to anyone," he said firmly. "You understand?" Her throat tightened. Why? If it's true, why hide it? Kaylin's jaw clenched. He leaned in, his breath brushing her ear as he whispered, "Because power like that makes enemies. And if they knew what you carried, they would kill you before I could stop them." Her chest pounded. For the first time, she saw it clearly. Not just the cold alpha, but the man who had chosen to protect her at all costs. And in that moment, Selene realized her hidden strength was not just hers to bear. It was a secret that bound them both, a dangerous truth that could either save their pack or destroy it. Word spread like wildfire across the Northern Territories. The alpha of Bloodfang Pack, Kaylin, the unshakable, the merciless, had chosen as his Luna a girl the world called barren. It was an insult some could not forgive. The Crimson Claw Pack, whose alpha's daughter had long been promised a union with Kaylin, was the first to rise in fury. Their pride was wounded, their political ambitions shattered. For years they had plotted a merger of packs through marriage, hoping to gain Bloodfang's strength, and now all of that had been undone by a girl they deemed worthless. Selene felt the storm before she saw it. The whispers of the pack had grown louder each day. She could feel eyes on her when she walked through the fortress halls, the sneers of warriors, the venom of women who had hoped to be Luna, and the mocking smirks of council members who believed Kaylin's decision was reckless. They said she was cursed, that her presence would weaken their alpha, that she would leave Bloodfang without an heir and doom them all. Selene bore it in silence, shoulders squared, even as doubt clawed at her chest. But one evening, the rumors boiled into open defiance. The High Council convened at the Great Hall, flames of the torches flickering against the stone walls, and representatives from allied packs sat in rigid rows. And at the center of the chamber stood Kaylin, radiating power as though carved from the mountain itself. Selene sat just behind him, her hands trembling in her lap. A councilman from Crimson Claw stepped forward, his voice sharp and cutting. "Alpha Kaylin, your choice dishonors the alliance that was promised. You spurn our daughter, a fertile she-wolf, for a barren girl? It is madness." Murmurs erupted across the room, voices hissing like snakes. Another voice joined, this one colder, sharper. "She is a curse. We all know the legend. Barren Lunas bring ruin. Do you seek to destroy your pack, Kaylin?"
Selene's heart pounded. Their words stung deeper than blades, each one reminding her of the chains she thought she had left behind. Kaylin did not move for a long moment. The silence stretched, suffocating. His face was unreadable, carved in stone, but the air itself seemed to vibrate with the dangerous tension of his wolf beneath the surface. Then, slowly, Kaylin rose. His chair scraped back with a sound like thunder rolling through the hall. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 1,000 storms. "You dare question me in my own hall?" The councilman flinched, but pride pushed them forward. "We question not your strength, but your judgment. That girl will ruin us." Kaylin's gaze swept the room, dark and merciless. And then, before every eye present, he reached back and pulled Selene to her feet. His hand curled around hers, possessive, unyielding. "He is mine," he said, his words sharp as blades.
Baron or not, Luna or not, she is mine. Gasps rippled through the chamber. You want to test her worth? Then test mine. Challenge me, and you challenge death. The hall fell silent. No one dared move. Even those who had spoken seconds ago now averted their gaze, trembling at the fury in his voice. Selene stood frozen, her heart hammering, the warmth of his grip searing through her. For the first time since she was sold, someone had claimed her, not as property, not as burden, but as his own. Kaelin turned, his arm wrapping around her shoulders, as if shielding her from every eye in the room. His final words echoed like thunder. Speak of banishment again, and I will banish your bloodlines from this world. No one answered. The council was silent. The rebellion had been crushed before it could ignite, but Selene knew this was only the beginning. Enemies had risen, and they would not forgive so easily. The great hall had emptied, but Selene still felt the weight of Kaelin's words echoing in her chest. She is mine. She replayed it again and again, the way his hand had wrapped firmly around hers, the way his voice had cut through the air like a blade of pure steel. He hadn't hesitated, not for a second, when others spat their venom against her. And yet, why? Why had a man like him, a ruthless alpha, feared by all, with every she-wolf begging for his gaze, chosen her? Why risk his reputation, his alliances, his pack's future for a girl the world labeled as barren? Selene sat alone by the high window in her chambers, moonlight spilling across the stone floor. The fortress was silent, except for the distant howl of wolves patrolling the forests beyond. Her chest tightened. She wanted to believe it was real, that he meant those words, that a lifetime of rejection and being treated as less than whispered otherwise. He protects me, but why? Why had a man like him, a ruthless alpha, feared by all, with every she-wolf begging for his gaze, chosen her? Am I just a shield against his enemies? Or is it something else? Kaelin stood outside her chamber door. He hadn't meant to linger, hadn't meant to let his wolf drag him here, pacing silently in the shadows like a restless beast. But ever since the council meeting, his instincts had sharpened, clawing inside him with a singular truth. Selene wasn't just his choice. She was his mate. He had known it the first moment he touched her wrist in the auction hall, the invisible spark that jolted through his veins. His wolf had surged forward, growling with recognition. His soul had whispered her name as though it had always belonged there. But he hadn't told her. Couldn't tell her. Not yet. Because with the bond came danger. With the bond came power. And enemies were already circling. If they knew she was his fated Luna, they would do more than mock her. They would hunt her, use her, break her, just to break him. So he locked the truth behind his cold eyes, even as it burned inside him.
The days that followed were filled with tension. Selene moved through the fortress as though balancing on a knife's edge. Some pack members bowed reluctantly, others refused to meet her eyes, but none dared openly disrespect her after Kylan's thunderous warning. Still, she could feel it. The whispers, the doubt, the coldness of a pack that had not accepted her. And yet, Kylan was always there. He didn't shower her with affection. He didn't smile, didn't soften in the way she imagined other alphas might toward their mates.
But he was present, watching, shielding. His presence was an unspoken promise. No one would touch her, not while he drew breath. At meals, he insisted she sit beside him at the high table. At council gatherings, he made her stand at his side, his hand resting lightly on the back of her chair, an unspoken claim. And when warriors tested her with lingering glares or muttered insults, his icy stare alone was enough to silence them. Selene didn't know what it meant. Protection? Duty? Pity? But there were moments, small, fleeting moments that cracked his armor. One evening, Selene walked the training grounds after the warriors had finished sparring. The air was thick with the scent of iron and sweat, the soil darkened from battle drills. She traced her fingers along a wooden practice sword, her thoughts drifting. A voice rumbled behind her. "You shouldn't be here after dusk." She turned sharply. Kylan stood in the shadows, his broad frame outlined by the torches, eyes glinting like embers. "I was only looking," she said softly. His gaze lingered on her, unreadable as ever. But instead of ordering her away, he stepped forward, picking up a blade from the rack. With one fluid motion, he extended it toward her. Then, learn. Her eyes widened. Me? Fight? You carry my name now. The world will come for you. I won't always be at your side. You will fight, and you will not fall. The way he said it, it wasn't a command. It was a vow. Selene swallowed hard and took the practice blade. It was heavy, awkward in her hands. He corrected her grip with surprising patience, his large hand covering hers, guiding her stance. Heat shot through her arm at his touch. For a moment, his chest brushed her back as he adjusted her posture. She stiffened, the nearness overwhelming. "Relax," he murmured, his breath ghosting her ear. Her heart thundered so loudly she thought he must hear it. When he finally stepped back, distance restored, the absence of his warmth felt like an ache. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her hands still tingling where he had touched them. Kylan, in his chambers, was no less restless. He could still feel her, the shape of her small hands beneath his, the scent of her hair lingering in his lungs. His wolf prowled inside him, restless and fierce, demanding he claim her fully. Mate, ours! Mark her! The beast snarled within, but Kylan clenched his fists until his knuckles cracked. Not yet, not until she knew the truth, not until she was ready. As days became weeks, something subtle began to shift between them. Selene, once timid in his presence, started to meet his gaze longer. She asked questions at meals, observed the workings of the pack, and even dared small smiles when their paths crossed in the gardens. Kylan, though still cold to others, found himself softening around her. He noticed the way her eyes lit when she spoke of the moon goddess. He caught himself listening to her humming at dusk, memorizing the sound. And when she laughed, a rare, fragile laugh, it felt like sunlight breaking through his storm. Neither of them spoke of it. The bond was there, burning, undeniable, yet both carried the silence like armor. Selene, unsure if she dared to believe in him. Kylan, protecting her from the dangers her truth would unleash. But the bond had a will of its own. One night, as the moon climbed high, Selene dreamed. She saw herself standing in a forest of silver light, Kylan's wolf prowling at the edges of the trees. Its eyes, his eyes, burned gold, fixed on her with a hunger that shook her soul. When she woke, heart racing, her wrist burned with an invisible heat, as if marked by something unseen. And in his own chambers, Kylan woke at the same moment, clutching his chest where his wolf had warred her name through the bond. They were linked. Their souls knew, even if their lips remained silent. Selene didn't understand why she was trembling the next morning when she met his eyes. She only knew that every step she took toward him felt like stepping closer to something dangerous, something beautiful, something she could never escape. And Kalen knew he couldn't hold the truth forever. For the first time in his life, the ruthless Alpha felt fear, not of enemies, not of war, but of what would happen when she discovered that she was not his pity, not his purchase, but his destiny. The moon was high, its silver light pouring into the fortress like a silent witness. Selene sat by the tall, arched window of her chamber, her thoughts restless. The words of the seer echoed in her mind. "You are not barren, child. You are marked." Marked. The word clung to her like a thorn. For years, she had carried the weight of shame, humiliation, and rejection. Yet now an unsettling truth itched beneath her skin. Something inside her was shifting, growing louder, harder to ignore. The visions came more often, not just nightmares, but glimpses of things she could not explain. Trees whispering her name, shadows curling around her hands like pets, and wolves bowing their heads when her eyes met theirs. She had thought she was losing her mind, until the seer confirmed it. Her family had lied. Selene clenched her fists. All those years of pain, of being spat on, mocked, sold like worthless goods, they were born of deceit. Her father hadn't sought to protect her reputation. He had buried it. Why? The door creaked open, and Kalen entered without knocking. His presence filled the chamber. Tall, broad-shouldered, his cold aura drawing the air tight. He wore his command like a second skin. Yet tonight, his eyes lingered on her longer than usual, searching. "You haven't eaten," he said, voice low but sharp. "I wasn't hungry," she whispered, though the knot in her stomach was not hunger, it was rage. Kalen's gaze narrowed. "You're pale. Something gnaws at you." He stepped closer, his wolf brushing against hers through the invisible bond she was only beginning to feel. His energy was protective, unyielding. She turned her face to the window. "Do you ever wonder why you chose me?" He frowned. "I didn't choose you." Her chest tightened. For a moment, she thought his words were cruel, but then he added softly, "The bond did." Her lips parted. He had said it, what she had begun to suspect in the quiet moments when his hand brushed hers or when his wolf's growl thundered across the bond in her defense. "You knew." Kalen's jaw flexed, unreadable. "I felt it the moment I saw you in that square, but you weren't ready. The pack wasn't ready." He moved closer, his hand bracing against the wall beside her. "If they knew you were my mate, enemies would bleed you dry to reach me." Selene's heart pounded. "They already want me gone. I hear their whispers." "I silenced them once," he said. "I'll do it again. But you—" He broke off, his wolf stirring beneath his skin. His eyes glowed faintly amber. "You're hiding something." Her breath caught. Could he sense it? The restless energy thrumming in her veins, the call of voices that weren't human, not wolf, but something older? She hesitated. The seer's words tangled on her tongue. "Your womb is not cursed. It is blessed, tied to the ancient bloodline that once ruled before the council was formed." If Kalen knew, would he still protect her, or would he see her as a weapon, a tool for power? But Kalen's eyes softened for the briefest moment. He reached for her chin, tilting her face toward him. "Don't fear me." Her throat tightened. She wanted to trust him, and so the truth slipped out, raw and trembling. "I am not barren." Kalen froze. The air between them thickened. "What did you say?" "The healers lied. My family lied. They spread the curse story to rid themselves of me." She stood, stepping back into the silver light, her hands shaking. "Something inside me is waking, Kalen. I can feel it in my blood, in my bones. I dream of spirits, of wolves bowing before me. I think," she cracked, "I am more than what they told me." The alpha's expression was unreadable, his body rigid. For a long moment, silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Then his wolf surged to the surface, eyes blazing gold, a growl rumbling low from his chest. Spirits. Under the ancient bloodline. She flinched. "You believe me?" "I've suspected," he admitted, stepping closer, circling her like a predator, both awed and wary. "There is something in you I cannot name. The bond isn't just between us. It radiates. My wolf feels it. The land responds to you." Her pulse thundered. "So I'm cursed then?" "No." His voice was sharp, final. "You're not cursed. You're dangerous." Selene swallowed. "To you?" "To them," Kaelin growled, his hand brushing her cheek, almost tender despite the beast that stirred within him. "The Council fears anything that breaks their chains of power. If they learn what you are, they'll come for you. They'll come for us." A chill swept her spine. The Council! The very men who mocked her as barren, who sneered at her as Kaelin claimed her in public. They had known something. Perhaps her family had struck a bargain with them, hiding her gift beneath the lie of infertility. Her voice hardened. "Then let them come." Kaelin's lips curved into the ghost of a smirk, pride flickering in his golden eyes. Spoken like a Luna. But even as he admired her courage, the truth gnawed at both of them. If her gift was real, if her bloodline truly carried the mark of the old ways, then Selene was not only Kaelin's mate, she was a key to something greater. And keys always drew thieves. The following nights were restless. Selene's powers began to manifest more clearly. Wolves that once snarled at her now lowered their heads in submission when she passed. The wind carried whispers that only she could hear. When she touched the earth, it pulsed faintly, alive beneath her fingertips. Once she woke to find Kaelin at her side, his wolf restless, his hand gripping her wrist where faint glowing lines had appeared, curling like silver vines beneath her skin. "What is this?" he demanded. Selene stared at the marks in awe and fear. "I don't know, but I think it's me." The fortress, once cold and foreboding, seemed to change with her. The fires burned brighter in her presence. The walls, once echoing with rumors, began to hum with silence when she entered. Even the guards who doubted her now avoided her gaze. Something in her unsettled them, and she could no longer deny it unsettled her, too. One evening, as the moon swelled full and heavy, Kaelin summoned her to the council chamber. The elders sat in their carved chairs, their gazes sharp and suspicious. "She does not belong here," one spat. "Your Luna brings unease. Wolves bow to her, not to you. What is she?" Selene's chest tightened, but Kaelin rose to his full height, his voice a thunderclap. "She is mine." "She is power," another council member sneered. "Power unchecked brings ruin." Selene's vision blurred for a moment, flashes of ancient forests, wars fought in blood and fire, wolves kneeling before a woman crowned in light. The whispers surged, louder now, telling her who she was, what she was meant to be. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "I am not barren. I am not cursed. I am the blood of the first Luna, the one who walked with spirits, and I will not be silenced." The chamber erupted into shouts and rage, but Kaelin only looked at her with something rare in his eyes, something fierce and unyielding. Not fear, not doubt, pride. The night air was heavy with the scent of pine and smoke. Inside the Bloodfang fortress, Selene sat by the fire, her fingers tracing absent-minded circles against the embroidered rug. For weeks, she had been haunted by whispers of unrest, Kaelin's enemies multiplying, alliances forming in the shadows, yet nothing prepared her for the sight that entered the grand hall that evening. 2 guards dragged in a man with a face that turned her stomach cold. His hair, once dark and commanding, had thinned and grayed, but his eyes were still sharp, venomous, and cruel. Her father. Selene froze where she sat. The years of being branded as useless, cursed, barren, came rushing back in a wave of bitterness so strong it nearly knocked her breath away. Her throat tightened. He should not have been here. Not after selling her like cattle. Not after discarding her as if she were less than human. Kaelin stood, towering as always, his wolf barely restrained. His eyes glowed with restrained fury as he regarded the man who dared show his face in Bloodfang territory. You enter my home uninvited. Give me one reason why I should not rip you apart where you stand. Her father sneered, the same sneer Selene remembered from her childhood. Disappointment, disgust, cruelty, all woven into a single twisted expression. Because I come bearing an offer that could end your troubles, Alpha, one you cannot ignore. Her stomach churned. She already knew whatever came next would cut deeper than any blade. Her father's gaze snapped to her, and for the first time, there was no pretense, no false smile, no mask of paternal concern, only calculation. Give her back, he said, his voice echoing in the hall. Hand the girl over to me, and peace between our lands will be restored. The council will cease their plotting, your enemies will stay their hand. But if you keep her, he leaned forward, his voice dripping with venom, you invite war, and you doom your pack. Gasps filled the room from the gathered pack leaders, but Selene could hardly hear over the roar in her ears. Hand her back, as though she were still nothing but property to barter away? Kaelin let out a low, menacing growl, the sound reverberating through the hall. She is not an object to be traded. She is mine. His voice was thunder, a promise of blood. You dare stand in my house and speak such words? You must think your life worthless. But her father only smiled, undaunted. Do you think I came here without insurance, Alpha? Your enemies are not far. They promised me gold, land, and power if I returned the girl to them dead. He let the words linger, cruel and deliberate. Selene was never meant to survive. She is a curse, and the world will be rid of her. Selene's breath caught, her chest aching as if pierced by invisible claws. Dead? He had never intended for her to have a future? All those years of cruelty, of being branded barren, it hadn't just been disdain. It had been a plan, a scheme to erase her. The hall erupted into chaos, shouts, snarls, accusations flying from every corner. Some demanded her execution. Others feared his words of rebellion, the shadow of war lurking at the edges of their land. Selene sat frozen, her heart torn between fury and despair. Kaelin's hand slammed down on the oak table, silencing the hall in an instant. His eyes locked onto Selene's, and for a brief moment, she saw something raw, protective fire, unshakable loyalty. No one, he said, his voice firm and commanding, touches my Luna. Not her blood, not her enemies, not the cursed lies of cowards. Selene's father laughed. Luna, you insult the title by giving it to her. She is barren, worthless. Do you think she will ever give you heirs? Do you think she will ever bring you prosperity? She is a mistake, and mistakes should be erased. The words dug deep, reopening old wounds Selene thought she had begun to heal. A part of her still feared it, that she was broken, that she truly was unworthy of Kaelin's claim. But another part, the part that had begun to feel the hum of ancient power in her blood, flared with defiance. No, Selene whispered, her voice trembling but growing stronger as she rose to her feet. You spent my whole life convincing me I was a curse, that I was barren, that I was nothing.
You sold me like livestock because you thought I had no worth. Her eyes blazed with tears, but also with strength Kaelin had helped her uncover. But you are the curse, Father. You traded your own daughter for power. You chose greed over blood. The hall was silent. Every eye was on her, even Kaelin's, pride flickering beneath his cold expression. Selene's father snarled, "You ungrateful brat! Everything I did was to ensure survival. You were weak, a stain on our bloodline." "No," Selene said again, louder this time. "I am stronger than you ever were, and one day everyone will see it." Her father's hand went to the dagger at his belt, his face twisted with rage, but Kaelin moved faster. In a blur of motion, he slammed the man against the stone wall, claws extended, his wolf just beneath the surface. "Touch her, and I'll tear you limb from limb." Kaelin growled, his voice primal. The hall trembled with the fury in him, but Selene stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "Kaelin," she whispered, "don't." He froze, his chest heaving, his claws inches from tearing into her father's throat. For a moment the alpha warred with the man, the instinct to kill against the bond he felt with her.
Selene turned to her father, her voice quieter now but edged with steel. "I should hate you. I should want vengeance for everything you've done, but I won't give you that satisfaction. You don't deserve my hate. You don't deserve anything from me." She stepped back, her hand still on Kaelin's arm. "Let him go. Let him crawl back to the enemies who bought him. Let the world see him for the traitor he is." Kaelin's jaw tightened, but after a long pause, he released her father, letting him fall to the ground in a heap. The man coughed, rage and humiliation flickering in his eyes, but he did not strike again. He knew the Alpha's mercy was a thin thread easily severed. "Leave," Kaelin commanded, his voice low and deadly, "and pray we never cross paths again." Her father spat on the floor, his gaze burning into Selene's. "This isn't over, girl. They will come for you, and when they do, not even your Alpha can save you." Then he was gone, dragged out by guards, his words lingering like a shadow. When the hall emptied, Kaelin turned to Selene. "You should not have stopped me," he said, his voice rough. "He deserved death." Selene met his gaze, her eyes glistening but resolute. "Maybe he did, but if you had killed him, it would have been his victory. He wanted to prove I was a curse, that my presence only brings blood. I won't let him write my story that way." For a long moment, Kaelin simply stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he reached out, brushing a tear from her cheek. "You are not a curse, Selene. You are mine, and anyone who dares say otherwise will answer to me." Her heart clenched, warmth breaking through the ache of betrayal. In that moment, she realized something profound. Her father had sold her, branded her, tried to destroy her, but he had also unknowingly delivered her into the only place she truly belonged. And though enemies gathered in the shadows, though war loomed on the horizon, Selene knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would never again let anyone define her worth. Not her father, not her enemies, not even fate. She was more than they ever imagined, and soon the world would see. The drums of war echoed through the valley, heavy and relentless like the beating heart of doom. Smoke curled above the trees as rival banners rose on the horizon. Dark crimson stitched with silver fangs, the mark of Alpha Darien of the Iron Fang pack. His forces marched in perfect rhythm, hundreds of wolves shifting seamlessly between man and beast, their growls vibrating through the earth. Inside Bloodfang Fortress, the great hall trembled with tension. Warriors strapped on armor, sharpened blades, and prepared for what was to come. Every conversation circled back to one name: Selene. "They're coming because of her. She'll bring our ruin. She was never meant to be Luna." The whispers spread like wildfire, laced with fear and venom. Selene stood in the center of it all, pale but unbroken. The eyes that once mocked her now studied her with suspicion, their gazes heavy with blame. But today she did not shrink. She lifted her chin, her breath steady, her heart burning with something fiercer than fear. Resolve. Kaelin's voice cut through the murmurs like steel. Enough. His gaze swept over the council, his wolf barely contained beneath the surface. She is mine. She is Luna of Bloodfang, whether you bow willingly or I break your necks until you do. A heavy silence followed, but Selene's heart clenched. He defended her, yes, but still he shielded her as though she were fragile, weak, a burden to be protected. But not today. When the council dismissed, Selene found him alone in the war chamber, his hands braced against the wooden table covered in maps. His jaw was tight, his golden eyes glinting with suppressed rage. "You should not have heard their words," he said, not looking at her. "This war isn't yours to carry." She stepped closer, her voice quiet but firm. "It is mine, Kaelin. They come because of me. They call me cursed, barren, unworthy. If I hide behind you now, they will never believe otherwise." Finally he looked up, and for a heartbeat, the Alpha looked less like a cold, untouchable king, and more like a man torn between love and fear. "Selene," he whispered, her name raw on his lips. "You don't know what they're capable of." She placed her hand over his, grounding him. "Then let me show them what I am capable of." The day of battle came swiftly. The battlefield stretched wide under a storm-colored sky, winds howling as if the gods themselves watched with bated breath. The rival pack assembled on the ridge, their alpha, Darien, towering over his warriors in his wolf form, a massive beast of black fur and glowing red eyes. The Bloodfang warriors shifted, forming a defensive wall around Kaelin and Selene. Murmurs rippled through the crowd when she stepped forward beside him, unarmed, her cloak billowing in the rising wind. "She'll get herself killed. Why is she here? She is nothing but a curse." Alpha Darien's laughter rolled across the valley like thunder. "Bloodfang has grown weak. Look at your so-called Luna. Fragile, cursed, barren, a disgrace. Hand her over, and I may spare your people." Kaelin growled, shifting halfway into his wolf, his aura crackling with dominance. "Touch her, and you die screaming." But before he could lunge forward, Selene raised her hand. The storm above shifted instantly, as though the clouds obeyed her will. The whispers of the spirits she had long ignored surged in her ears, flooding her veins with fire and ice. "No," she said softly, but the sound carried across the battlefield. She placed her gaze on Kaelin, every gaze locked on her. Fear threatened to claw at her throat, but she forced it down. Closing her eyes, she reached deep into the bond she now understood, her bloodline's gift. The land, the wind, the ancient spirits, they listened. When she opened her eyes, they glowed faintly silver, the mark of her true power. Gasps erupted, even Kaelin stiffened, his wolf straining to respond. Darien sneered. "Tricks, that's all." He raised his claws and howled, sending his warriors surging forward. But before the first wolf could strike, the ground trembled. Vines burst from the soil, wrapping around charging wolves, dragging them back. The wind shifted, howling with fury, knocking others off their feet. Selene's voice rang out, not with fear, but with command. "Enough!" The spirits obeyed. A wall of fire ignited between the packs, searing bright, forcing Darien's warriors to halt. For a moment, silence reigned. Selene turned to face both armies, her cloak whipping in the wind, her silver-lit eyes burning with authority. "You call me barren, cursed, unworthy, but I am no curse. I am the bond between wolf and land, spirit and flesh. My womb is not empty. It is marked by the ancestors for something greater." I lifted her chin, her gaze locked on Darien. "And I will not be traded, sold, or silenced again." The Bloodfang pack gasped, their murmurs turning into cries of awe. Some fell to their knees instinctively, bowing to the power she had unleashed. Darien snarled,
his pride wounded, but even he hesitated. The spirit's wrath still danced in the air, waiting for Selene's command.
Kalen stepped beside her, pride and something softer shining in his eyes. His hand brushed hers, a silent vow spoken in the bond they now both felt. Then he faced the enemy, his voice a growl of thunder. "She is mine, my Luna, my mate. Deny her, and you deny me." The Bloodfang warriors roared, their loyalty rekindled by the display of power and unity. And for the first time, Selene did not feel like the cursed girl who was sold like property. She stood tall, power humming in her blood, the spirits whispering their approval. For the first time, she felt like a Luna. The war had only begun, but the world now knew that Selene was no barren curse. She was destiny. The battlefield was a graveyard of howls and shattered steel. Smoke curled upward in thick plumes, staining the night sky as though even the moon had hidden her face from the carnage. Blood soaked the earth, the cries of wolves in their beast forms echoing through the valley. Selene stood in the heart of it all, her gown torn and stained, her eyes glowing with a strange ethereal light. Kalen was beside her, his towering form half-shifted, claws tipped with silver, fangs bared in a snarl. His wolf spirit burned so strongly that even his warriors trembled, but it was Selene who held every gaze. The rival alpha, Darius of the Ironclaw pack, sneered from across the plain. "You think a barren Luna can save you? She is a curse, Kalen. She will doom you all." The words cut deep, echoes of years of shame and whispers returning to Selene. But instead of bowing her head, she raised her chin. The wind seemed to hush, the flames bending toward her as though listening. She stepped forward, voice steady, though the ground itself trembled beneath her bare feet. "I was never barren. I was bound. Bound by lies, bound by fear, bound by those who wanted me broken. But tonight, I break those chains." Gasps rippled through the battlefield. Even Kalen turned his head slightly toward her, his amber eyes burning with awe. Selene lifted her hands and the earth responded. Roots tore free from the soil, wrapping around enemy wolves mid-leap. The sky cracked open, lightning illuminating her like a goddess reborn. She felt the spirits of the land surge within her. Wolves long past, ancestors whose blood flowed through her veins. They whispered one truth. You were chosen. Darius snarled and charged, shifting into his monstrous wolf form. Twice the size of any ordinary wolf, his dark pelt bristled with fury. His warriors followed, a tide of claws and fangs rushing toward Selene. But Kalen moved faster. His roar split the air as he shifted fully. His massive obsidian wolf tackled Darius head-on. The two titans clashed, teeth sinking into flesh, fur torn, blood splattering across the battlefield. The ground shook with each impact. Selene stood her ground as the Ironclaw wolves swarmed her. For a moment, fear clawed at her chest. Then her power surged again. She extended her hand, and a wave of silver light rippled outward. Wolves staggered, thrown back as though by invisible chains. The spirits answered her call, fighting beside her. "Stand," she shouted, her voice echoing through the valley. "Stand for your Alpha. Stand for your Luna." The Bloodfang warriors rallied, emboldened by her strength. Where once they doubted, now they fought with renewed fury. They chanted her name, Selene, Selene, as if she had already carved her legacy in stone. Kalen, locked in brutal combat with Darius, bled heavily. For a terrifying moment, Darius pinned him, fangs at his throat. Selene's heart froze. Without thinking, she summoned every ounce of strength within her. The spirits roared through her veins, and with a cry, she unleashed a blinding surge of energy. The blast struck Darius like a hammer of the gods, hurling him across the battlefield. He hit the ground with a thunderous crash, unmoving. Silence fell, only broken by the ragged breaths of the warriors who remained. Kaelin shifted back, his body bruised and bloodied, but his pride unbroken. He strode to Selene, his chest heaving, his eyes never leaving hers. In front of the council, in front of every warrior, he took her hand and raised it high. She is not a curse. She is our Luna, my mate, my strength. Defy her, and you deny me. The council, once so rigid in tradition, bowed their heads. One by one, warriors knelt, their voices rising in a thunderous oath. Luna, Luna of power. Selene stood tall, her tears glistening but unfallen. For the first time in her life, she was not branded broken, not sold as a burden. She was chosen, honored, revered. The war was over. Days later, the fortress of Bloodfang rang with celebration. Torches lit the night, drums pounded, and wolves shifted to dance beneath the moon. Selene moved among them, not as the outcast girl she once was, but as their Luna. Kaelin never left her side, his protective hand always at her back, his eyes soft when they rested on her. In a quiet moment, away from the cheers, Selene touched her stomach. A warmth had lingered there since the battle, a strange flutter that made her pause. Her breath caught as realization dawned. Life. A child. The mate bond pulsed stronger than ever, as though the moon herself was blessing her womb. Selene turned to Kaelin, her lips parting but words failing her. Instead, she took his hand and placed it over her stomach. His eyes widened, and for once, the cold Alpha's composure broke. Emotion flickered raw and unguarded across his face. He drew her into his arms, holding her as though she were the only thing keeping him alive. You are my everything, and now you carry our heir. Selene's tears finally fell not of sorrow but of joy. The prophecy was shattered, the lies undone. She was not barren. She was chosen, destined to stand at Kaelin's side, destined to be Luna of power. As the moon bathed them in silver light, she knew one truth with unshakable certainty. The world would remember her not as the cursed girl sold like property, but as the Luna who rewrote destiny itself.